Hey everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Racing Through Canada's Past. I'm sorry about not airing any episodes the last couple weeks. I came down with something absolutely nasty and I just was not feeling myself. So, unfortunately, I was not able to record anything new the last couple weeks, and I apologize for that. But I'm back and I'm excited to take you back to Racing Through Canada's Past. On this week's episode, we are going to be looking through Saskatchewan. There's lots of cool things I came across actually, and I'm excited to talk about it. But like I said, we're moving from West Coast to East Coast. So if we haven't gotten to your province yet, don't our territory, don't worry about it. We will get there. Okay, this week we're gonna take a look at what people call the flattest province in the country and the toughest province to pronounce and write when filling out our elementary school maps here in Canada. You guys, us Canadians, know what we're talking about. Americans probably like, what the hell? But we're excited to talk about Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan is known for its agricultural and natural beauty, with the province supplying more than a third of the world's total durum wheat and is the world's top exporter of lentils and dry peas. But we're not here to talk about that, though. We're here to talk about motorsports. Saskatchewan is the first automobile rolled into Saskatchewan in the early 1900s, with the first vehicle being registered in 1906. Early on, farmers were relying on automobiles for work to get their crops to local markets, farm supplies, and to travel to see their family. With the growing demand of cars in Regina, General Motors actually opened a plant in the province in 1928. The factory employed 850 people and could produce 150 cars a day. Sadly, just 2 years later, thanks to the market crash and the Great Depression, the plant closed in 1930. But in 1907, I know we're backtracking here a little bit, guys. Regina's first speedway. I know you guys are gonna laugh at that, Regina. Haha. They opened their first speedway in 1907 as the Regina Exhibition Race Track, which was located on what is now Mosaic Stadium and footsteps away from the Brant Center. It was a half-mile dirt oval, and you can probably guess it. It was a horse track, but it started running stock cars as well. In 1914, the track was closed and the grounds were taken over by the government as training grounds for the war effort. But thankfully, in 1917, racing returned to the Speedway and was the main attraction of the Regina Fair until 1937. Model T races were held at the fairgrounds from 1942 to 1948. It was put on by the Lions Club to actually raise money for British war orphans. I found an article called Racing Model Ts by Bob Rogers, where it outlines what it was like racing in the 1940s. The races were actually called Milk for Britain. I'm going to dive into that and dissect that at a later time. I read it a couple days ago and it was phenomenal. And this is where some of the information actually came from. But in the early days of the race, it was $100 to win a heat and $300 to win the feature. Later on, it would become $300 to win a heat and $600 to win the feature. 25 cars were actually entered into the first race. And the race would actually take place on Labor Day each year. But over the next few years, it had actually grown with multiple races happening each year to where it actually got up to 10 in 1948. But the championship race was actually always held on Labor Day weekend. So there was never anything going on after that for the race. But it was always a long winter for that case, right? One thing is for certain, like I said, I will be looking into more about that with Racing Maltese by Bob Rogers at a later date. So stay tuned for that. In July 1st, 1949, saw the IMCA host an event for big cars, and we know them now as sprint cars, but back then they were called big cars. I actually hosted an event at the fairgrounds, but like a lot of things, I can't find anything about the event. So, and I'm gonna be honest, trying to find stuff about racing Saskatchewan was really, really tough. I didn't think it was going to be that difficult, but it ended up being difficult, surprisingly enough. But I found a few things, and I hope you guys are enjoying this. In 1949, yeah, the IMCA event for big cars, but there was actually regular stock car racing from 1950 to 1968 at the track. I was gonna take a look because I thought I saw something else, but I was completely wrong. So well, like I said, we'll circle back. There's lots of things about the province of Saskatchewan I'm learning, thankfully through CanadianRacer.com. So there's little fun tidbits there that, and then I go from there and I look up Wikipedia, whatever, what other articles come up about the event. But another early racetrack was called River Park, and it was located in Lumsden, Saskatchewan. It is actually known to have only one race, and it was held on June 3rd, 1921. This one, I'm going to butcher it, so I'm sorry. Assiniboia Fairgrounds was another dirt track in Saskatchewan, and is, again, one event, July 21st, 1921. I am noticing there's a couple of those. But this one it's not an early track, and I'm breaking my promise of starting off at as early as possible to work my way forward. But I loved what I read here, and what I found out about the track and some of the long-standing other nature it has with racing here in Canada. Bridge City Speedway is located in or was located in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. It was opened in 1971 as part of a 2-day Labor Day event. It was hosted by the Saskatoon Stock Car Racing Association, or also known as the SSCRA. The winner of so actually before this track, it actually they were competing at the Saskatoon Fairgrounds, if I remember correctly. Seeing I'm screwing up here, well, and because I realized when I wrote what I did, it actually had messed up a little bit. So I'm sorry about this, but I think it was the Saskatoon Fairgrounds. Uh, they the SSCRA was kicked out, and they built a brand new track, and they actually had a contest on the radio on CKOM radio out in Saskatoon to name the new track. The winner was Ken Worth of Saskatoon. He came up with the name Bridge City Speedway, and that's what they went with. In its first season, the track started out as a 3rd-mile dirt oval, but the dust was just too much. They tried different things. I saw that they tried different things to keep the dust down, but it just wasn't working. So sure enough, it got paved, and from 1972 until its closure in 2005, it was a paved racetrack. Now, according to the Google Maps, the track was located at Manic Road and Evergreen Boulevard, but there's a roundabout exactly where the pinpoint was. So, but right near there's the Sylvia Fedoruk School. But the good news is the SSCRA moved to a new home in 2006, just off Highway 11 near Highway 12, and opened as the Auto Clearing Motor Speedway in July of 2006. The SSCRA had actually brought the grandstands over from Bridge City Speedway to the current track. Now, you guys may know Auto Clearing, or you may know it as Sutherland Automotive Speedway. But this track is a 3rd-mile paved oval, and it actually hosts the NASCAR Canada Series only stop in Saskatchewan. And in 2025, it's actually going to be July 16th. So if you're out in Saskatchewan or heading out that way around that time, try and make it to Sutherland Automotive Speedway and go check out the NASCAR Canada Series race. And that's another division we're going to talk about in a little while, because we all know it as CASCAR from before. So talking to a few friends, and we're going to have something great to come up with for that. So stay tuned. I will be circling back to Sutherland Automotive Speedway at a later date. Just still recovering a little bit. I don't know if you guys can tell by my voice, but still recovering just a little bit. Um, But and I put this together a little quicker than I thought I was going to. I should have probably put it off another week, but I didn't want to. I wanted to get back on here and talk to you guys. So, but we're gonna get into a couple of the drivers from Saskatchewan. The first one I came across, I could have brought this guy up earlier in the episode actually, as he had competed at the Regina Exhibition Racetrack in the Model T division. Now, this guy, man, what a legacy, what a race career this guy had. His name was Emory Collins, also known as Spunk and he was born in 1904 in Sibley, Iowa. The Collins family moved to Regina, Saskatchewan in 1907, and at just 9 years old, Emory started working at a local garage. By the time he was in his teens, you can imagine he was infatuated with cars and was fascinated by the sport of racing. And at just 17, Collins got himself a Model T and started racing in 1921, where he actually won his first race at Sutherland, Saskatchewan. The following year, Collins traveled to Winnipeg with a Chevrolet big car where he would pick up another win. During this time, Emery was quite the hockey player, actually, even competing for the Canadian national team at the Olympics and had played with the Minneapolis Millers of the Central Hockey League and then what also became as the American Hockey Association. But it was Alex Sloan, who was actually a promoter with the IMCA, who brought Collins to the States in the 30s to become a professional hockey player in Chicago. But strangely enough, it didn't take Sloan long enough to realize that Emery had a better left foot than he did a slap shot. I'm going to assume. I don't know. Um, but throughout the 1930s, Collins and another driver by the name of Gus Schrader were absolute menaces on the track, trading jabs. You know, they were the class of the field when it came to sprint car drivers. Schrader had actually won 5 straight championships from 1937 to 1938, or 37, sorry. Collins would get his first in 1938 at the final race. He actually got that at the final race. And unfortunately, from 1942 to 1945, racing had pretty much stopped because of World War II breaking out. And of course, Collins did his duty. He went across. He survived. He came back and he ended up winning 3 straight championships from 1946 through 1948. I didn't put the years down. That's why I stuttered there a little bit. But he got some big wins in 1950 in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Oskaloosa, Iowa, and Lethbridge, Alberta. Collins had wrapped up his racing career in 1951 and retired in Lamars, Iowa. Emery was inducted in the National Sprint Car Hall of Fame in 1991. He was also added to the Kossuth County Racing Hall of Fame in 2011 and was part of the inaugural class in the Iowa Hall of Fame and Racing Museum in 2018. Our next driver we're going to take a look at is Allan Moffatt. Allan was born in 1939 in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and at just 17 years old, the Moffatt family had actually relocated to Australia because his father was transferred there, and as he worked for Massey Ferguson. In the early 60s, Allan would get the need for speed, where he competed in the inaugural Sandown 6-hour enduro in Melbourne with co-driver John Layton in a Ford Lotus Cortina, where he finished fourth. In 1965, he entered the Australian Touring Car Championship, driving the Lotus Cortina. But after his first season, Allan would actually move to the States to compete in the newly formed Trans Am Series. Collins would actually, sorry, I got a little mixed up there. Moffatt would actually win in just his third start with the Trans Am Series uh, at the Briar Motorsports Park in the Briar 250, beating out Bruce Jennings by overlap in a Plymouth Barracuda. Moffatt returned to Australia, but spent a lot of time also in the States competing in the Cortina as well as the Ford Mustang built by Carroll Shelby. He had even competed in the Trans Am class in the 24 Hours of Daytona as well as the 12 Hours of Sebring. He even drove 4 Trans Am races, in a Bud Moore Engineering Mercury Cougar. I'm excited. As soon as I saw Bud Moore, my NASCAR uh, memory came into play there, and I was like, "Oh, Bud Moore." I'm like, I started looking at that. I'm gonna have to look into Bud Moore Engineering and what became of it. There's some cool stuff there, and we're gonna hear a couple things here about Allan Moffatt as well, teaming up with Bud Moore. But in 1969, we saw Moffatt return to live full time in Australia and become a regular again in the Australian Touring Car Championship in his bright red Coca-Cola sponsored Ford Boss 302 provided by CarCraft, and again finished off by Bud Moore Engineering. Tom Hamilton and Lou Melia were a big part of Moffatt's 101 championship and non-championship touring races in 151 starts from 1969 through 1972, including the first ever win by one of the 7 factory Boss Mustangs built for racing in his debut at the Southern 60 at Sandown in May of 1969. Although he won a lot of races, one thing eluded Moffatt. That was a championship. Finishing 10th in 1969, 6th in 1970, 2nd in 1971, and 3rd in 1972. I would get so frustrated not getting a championship after winning that many races. I forgot to grab all the numbers for his championships, but Allan would actually go on to compete in the Bathurst 1000 and also the Bathurst 500. I think he won both. I screwed up. I'm gonna have to go back through Allan Moffatt here. He had such a long career. There's so much going on, and I know I missed some things. So we're gonna look back at another time. But Moffatt's fourth wins in the Bathurst were in 1970, 1971, in 1973 with Ian Geohagen, and again in 1977 with Jackie Ickx. Allan, for the better part of his career, won his races with the Ford Motor Company, with the exception of his 4th Touring Car Championship and final in 1983, and the Sandown Enduro where he drove a Mazda. Allan retired from racing in 1989 and was actually inducted into the V8 Supercars Hall of Fame in 1999 and the Australian Motorsports Hall of Fame as an inaugural member in 2016. As I just said, there's a lot more into Allan Moffatt than I was even going to go into and start with. But I'm going to have to do almost a whole episode just about him. So if you want to know more about Allan Moffatt, let me know. But that is going to do it for us for episode 4 of Racing Through Canada's Past. Once again, I apologize for not putting out any new episodes the last couple of weeks, but I will be back to regular postings each week. Next week, we'll be looking at the province of Manitoba, so I hope you're ready for that one. Because if you remember back in episode 1, we talked about Winnipeg being one of the hosts of the earliest motorsports events in Canada. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Racing Through Canada's Past. We'll see you guys next week. Bye now.
You can find Jomo Media and Promotions on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and at jomomedia.ca. Until next time, keep your engines running and your belts tight.